Welcome, everybody, to this week's amazing, absolutely outstanding, and very prestigious Nym Community Call, 29th of June. It's a pretty special day in various different ways. First of all, I'm signing in from Nym HQ in Neuchâtel, which is super exciting. I've never been here before, so actually I'm doing this call from the Nym office, the first Nym office. And besides that, I'm also here with two pretty exciting people from my team. Ladies first. So first, let me introduce Diane. How's it going, Diane?
Hi, doing great. Thank you. Happy to be here. It's my first time on the community call, but I might be here more often. You might have heard me on Twitter Space just now and last week as well.
Yeah, so sorry for not making that one, by the way. I really wanted to, but I couldn't.
Right. I already forgot you were supposed to join. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm
No
sorry.
worries.
I hope you don't hold grudges, so we can just forget it.
It's all good, all good.
So yeah, hopefully Diane will jump in to co-host these community calls with me because sausage fests are never fun. So it's nice to have some diversity on the panel, and also just because she's a pretty good host. I listened to the whole space though. I couldn't participate, but I listened to it, and I have to say that you're a pretty good host.
Thank you. That was my first one, so I was a bit nervous. Today was better, but it's gonna keep improving.
Also, with all the technical issues, as Twitter is absolutely imploding lately, so it was probably not a fun time for you.
Oh well. Okay, we've been through it now.
Yeah. All right. And my other guest for today, who you may have seen actually on the announcement posts for this community call, is our new head of community for Asia, who I'm super excited to introduce to you guys, Jacky Lee, aka Reckless Degen, which is a really cool name. How's it going, Jacky?
Hey everyone, this is Jacky speaking. This is my first time doing a community call with you guys, but I have listened to a couple of the previous ones. I must say, I'm very happy to be here, being able to participate for the first time. And yeah, my background, I've been in crypto for since 2017, and kind of touched on a little bit of everything including from my gaming days at Animoca to my DeFi days at Mantra, and also did some venture studio with a organization called Master Ventures. Not sure if anybody knows any of those organizations. My experience has, been quite broad and has finally led me to Nym as a privacy-focused project. I've always been in crypto because of my personal ideology, right? I love the idea of freedom. I love the idea of kind of controlling your own destiny, controlling your own presence online, your own finances online, and with Nim's mission being so important to, quite frankly, at least in my eyes, the future of humanity in general. I'm happy to fight the good fight and be here as part of the community with all you guys.
It's awesome to have you on. But before we get started with our conversation, let's go through with the news roundup. Diane, do you want to get started with the news roundup?
Yeah, sure thing. So first we have the Bybit votes. So I'm sure, as all of you know, we're having a big Bybit campaign at the moment. We're trying to get listed on Bybit, and the vote is happening next week. Yeah, I don't know if you guys talked about that in a previous community call, or is this new for this week?
It's new.
Right.
We haven't mentioned it.
Okay, you haven't mentioned it. So if anyone could drop the link to the blog post in the chat, that would be great. I can do it as well after this. But we're having this huge campaign but an airdrop in collaboration with Bybit. We have two separate campaigns. One of them has a 80,000 US dollar prize pool in Nym token, of course, and that is for new Bybit users. You can register for Bybit via our affiliate link, and then deposit up to minimum, I think it's 100 US dollars, and then vote for Nym on the day. And then we have another prize pool, 20,000 US dollars for people who are already on Bybit and who can vote for Nym. And if Nym wins the vote, we'll throw in another 100K US dollar in Nym token as rewards for the voters. So that's really huge. I encourage everyone to take a look at the campaign. If you don't have a Bybit account yet, please try to register ASAP, because you need to pass KYC, and that might take some time. So if you want to be eligible to vote for Nym, you need to have passed your KYC and have made the deposit as well. So yeah, that's the first update.
And the second one is a pretty happy one, actually. The Nix chain upgrade happened successfully yesterday. For those of you who kept an eye on the channel, you probably saw our announcement, which was a bit more serious than it should have been in retrospect, because it was probably the smoothest chain upgrade in the history of mankind. So the chain was upgraded from one version to the next. The downtime was less than 1 minute, I think, and the wallet was down in total for less than 10 minutes. We, just to be completely fair with you guys and honest, we expected something worse. We're kind of chewing our nails while it was happening, but it just happened and it went very smoothly. It was beautiful. On to you, Diane.
Yeah, the chain upgrade was great. Yeah, really good stuff. We also had the our previous campaign, tutorial campaign that ended last Sunday. So I have all the submissions. I'm sure some of you guys have submitted your tutorial on either Nym Connect or Nym Wallet. We have over 600 entries, but that doesn't equal the exact number of tutorials. It just like reflects their interest overall. So I still have to go through all of them and check which are the best ones. But yeah, the top 5 winners will get, I think it is around 400 USD in Nym tokens. So that's a pretty good price, and I can't wait to look at your submissions. And yeah, so I'll take a look this week, and I guess you can be contacted maybe end of next week or the week after. End of next week. Let's aim for that.
And on that note, actually, we should probably also highlight, Diane, that we've heard you. So the reward process sometimes is a little slow because there are a lot of things that needs to happen. Enable rewarding, and we also need to do the pesky KYC and all of that stuff. So Diane and some other people who are involved in the rewarding process and myself are sticking our heads together to speed it up a little bit. So expect some updates regarding that soon, or at least just some speed up in the process as much as we can speed it up. Another important update, which I'm super proud of Salazar for pulling off finally. This has been in the making for quite some time in the background. The Discord server now has an onboarding process where you can select your interests. You can select what kind of stuff are you interested in when it comes to Nym, whether you want to stay up to date with the news, whether you want to set up infrastructure and you're interested in more those kind of updates. And then we can finally not just tag at everyone at all times and then make people mute our server, but you can just get updates about the things that are interesting to you, and then not get updates about the rest of the things. So link to the announcement post with further details was shared in the chat. Make sure to check it out. And Salazar, please inform everyone if they can do it retroactively, so people who are already in the server can. I assume they probably can. So if you joined the server already, which you probably did because you're on this call, then make sure to go through the onboarding process to be able to select your interests and get updates accordingly. The other thing that happened and will be happening from now on a weekly basis, the target date for these is Thursday. We're going to be sharing general privacy news roundups every week. So this time around, it didn't make it into the community call because I was traveling to Neuchâtel and I arrived here at the office basically 20 minutes before the call. But I will be bringing these privacy news, like the more important privacy news items to the call as well. Just because we always talk about Nym here and never really talk about things external to Nym. But there's this whole world of privacy news that can be really interesting sometimes. And we want to make sure that our community is probably interested in privacy, so we want to make sure that you guys get a bit of a selection of those as well. So we try to keep it to a minimum. We don't want to spam you guys with hundreds of news articles. So we just share a selection once a week of the most important privacy news that the Nym team finds interesting and important.
Yeah, great. Last news of today. So we just launched a campaign with Galaxy. I don't know if some of you are Galaxy users, but it's basically one of the biggest platforms for Web3 community. And they have around like 1 million followers on Twitter. So they do like huge campaigns, and we're doing a campaign in partnership with them today. This is related to the Bybit campaign as well. I'll drop the link right here in the chat. So yeah, if you guys are Galaxy users or interested to get started with Galaxy, please check out the campaign. We added more prizes to the prize pool, and it will be an airdrop as well. Yeah, thank you.
On to events. So a really interesting thing happened yesterday. It was a first. Our Reddit has been a bit of a foster child of our social media channels. We never actually had anybody to properly manage it, besides just posting the most important updates on it. But yesterday, Alexi and Harry attended a Reddit AMA on r/cryptocurrency, which is I think the biggest crypto Reddit. Am I right about that, Diane?
It's over 6 million members.
Yeah, so it was pretty dope. Some pretty cool questions were asked. Big thanks to everybody who asked questions. If you want to read through the AMA, then you can do so at the link that was shared in the chat. And yeah, the AMA lasted for 2 hours, I think. Was it 2 hours? It was 2 hours, right?
Yeah, but it's always on and off, and they kept answering a bit after as well. They're welcome to come back and answer more questions as well.
Yeah, so if you have any follow-ups to those, then you can still just leave your questions, and hopefully Alexi and Harry will find the time.
About that, we also have the submissions. So we were doing a giveaway of 2,000 USD and Nym token for the Reddit questions as well. So the top 50 questions will share this prize pool, and the users had to enter in a form. So I have the Google form, I have the results now, and I'll be picking people soon. So yeah, good luck for that if you took part. But yeah, in other news, so last week we had our first Twitter Spaces. Well, in a long time, I would say. We had it with Alexis Roussel, our COO. You must know him well. It was about the recent victory in Geneva, where the right to digital integrity was incorporated into the Constitution. So I'm sure Nick will share the recording with you. Otherwise, I can share it. Basically, if you didn't know already, our COO, Alexi, has been campaigning for the right to digital integrity for over 10 years. He also wrote a book about it. So we discussed about that in the Twitter space. There was a lot of interesting stuff. And today we just finished another Twitter space. The recording is available on Twitter as well. And I'm sure I'll share the link with Nick to drop it in here as well. We had a chat with Seb 3.0, who's kind of an influencer in the Cosmos ecosystem. He's based in Paris, and he actually organizes the Nebular Summit, which is happening late July in Paris. And we're actually going to be there. And our DevRel Max is giving a talk there on how to integrate Nym. He's also the founder of the Epicenter podcast, which is a very popular podcast. They previously interviewed Jaya and Harry as well. So do check it out. It was a pretty interesting talk. We kept it short. But yeah, in terms of the upcoming event, yes, so we have two big upcoming events next week that I would encourage you guys to check out. First of all, there will be an AMA with Harry that will be on our Telegram channel, so our own. And the goal of this AMA is basically to learn about our plans with Bybit. So this is highly related to our current campaign. Harry is basically going to share more about Nym's future roadmap, added more details, and answer any questions you might have before or about the vote. It's going to be very important. And that's on July 3rd. And on July 5th, just 2 days later, Harry is doing another AMA, and that will be with Bybit's official account on Twitter. So it will be under the form of a Twitter Spaces. And if when they announced it, or we have also announced it on our Twitter, if you have questions for him, you can put them down in the comments, and we'll share them with Bybit as well, or maybe directly on their Twitter profile. That will be something pretty big as well, and that's happening July 5th, so just 1 day before the vote, which starts on July 6th. And yeah, I highly encourage you guys to get into it and check it out. So that's it for our events part.
Yes, and that's it for the news roundup. Just one quick note. I'm not sure. I was only paying half attention. I'm not sure if you mentioned, but the AMA with Harry on next Monday, will be on Telegram, so on our main Telegram channel. Now on to our conversation with dear Mr. Reckless Degen.
Hey.
Welcome to the call, Jacky. I'm super excited to have you on, and also to have you on the team.
Likewise, man. Happy to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about your background. You mentioned that you joined or started doing things in the crypto space in 2017, which is pretty early. What were those things? What's your path? What's your journey?
Yeah, sure. So even earlier, when I was in college and stuff, there was always this one Reddit thread that was like r/Bitcoin, where a very badly drawn wizard with a coin existed, right? And then that was like the first exposure that I had to any type of cryptocurrency. But even as many of you guys might know, from the early days, it was a lot less serious than it was nowadays, right? It was, people kind of almost making a meme out of Bitcoin, and the people that were in the community mainly were there just to kind of test it out for fun. And there was this kind of stigma, or the general makeup of the community back then were still filled with very early people who weren't very professional let's just say. And then I had a lot of the people that kind of dropped out of high school from my high school started talking about Bitcoin. So my first reaction was to not take it like super seriously, right? And we even started to like make jokes about it. And then it wasn't until I was working at Animoca and they started to kind of have a shift within the company, right? Previously, they were just doing mobile games, mid-core mobile games. And suddenly, one day, my boss at the time, Yusuf, he came to my desk and he said, "Hey, like, check this project out. It's called CryptoKitties. That's the new game that we're going to be working on, and it's something different. It has to do with like Ethereum, and I know that nobody really understands any of this stuff in our organization right now. So I want you to be the one to like wrap your head around it and know everything there is to know about it, and then kind of lead the CryptoKitties project, right?" So I'm like, okay, let me take a look. I go on the website and I look at this quote unquote game, and then my instant reaction was like, this is not a game. We're a serious gaming company that produces real games, right? This is like a web game that was something that would have been developed like 15, 20 years ago, right? I played, it was basically Neopets to a degree when CryptoKitties first launched. But then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to learn this no matter what. So then I started testing out like, how to, buy the kitties, testing out like how to buy Ethereum. And then when I actually started to use Ethereum, my first thought was, wait, like this is actual money. Like it has actual market value. I can spend it and it's programmable. I can do anything I want with it. I was in Hong Kong at the time, and those of you who haven't been to Hong Kong, it's a very finance centered like culture and city, right? It's pretty much the main industry within the city. So I've always had like my dislike and distaste for finance people because that culture was just not one that I was very much agreeing with. I've always been more of the underdog rooting for the little guy kind of mentality. So I really saw, crypto as a way to really fight back against the system, and it was an effective way to fight, right? And one of the stories that all that I like to tell to people about people who don't really believe in crypto back in the early days, or they say that it was just kind of controlled by the government, whatever, is the fact that even before the 2008 market crash and crypto was created, there was a project that existed before called like eGold. And the people that started eGold eventually had their servers taken down, I think it was by the FBI. And that was the end of that project, right? So it's not like, people in the past haven't tried to really break free of the current global financial order. They just never were able to succeed, right? So that kind of brings us to like where we are today, where with Bitcoin's decentralized technology, that is no longer possible. Well, it is still possible, but it obviously would take a lot of resources from any government to actually try to attack the network, which makes it economically unviable, right? But I'm sure this is all stuff you guys already know. So as I interacted with crypto more, the questions that kind of like came up were a lot about like actual use cases, right? Especially back in 2017, 2018, we didn't really have DeFi yet. There was still very limited use in using smart contracts to actually be able to really do anything meaningful except for buying kitties, right? So it wasn't really until I think 2020 where DeFi summer came around, and I joined a DeFi platform called Mantra, also based in Hong Kong at the time. Did we really start to see this new wave of like adoption once again, right? It was really funny for me, especially in early 2020 when we started to see all the second wave of NFTs really start to make their mark, because obviously when I started nobody really knew anything about it, no one really cared, and now it's pretty much a household term. However, I don't spend too much time in the NFT industry anymore. Obviously, I still keep tabs on a lot of the projects. And a big part of that is, I do really feel that the industry in NFTs hasn't really made any innovation in the like since I started, right? People are still just kind of creating PFP collections with even less utility than like what we did with CryptoKitties. And in DeFi, that was where I actually saw like a better use case, right? And it was also in environment where there was a lot of innovation happening at the time, right? With starting with Uniswap, especially for example, right? Throughout that time, we really did see a lot of projects try to cash in on a lot of hype, right? And this really happens like every cycle, right? And for those of us who have been in crypto, for multiple cycles, we've seen like these narratives like come and go, come and go, come and go. And when DeFi summer came, once again we see a lot of projects that are pretty much just derivatives of existing projects trying to kind of gain some market share, right? Just by being on another chain. And that's still what happens a lot nowadays. One of the things that I really enjoy doing being in the space is really being on that bleeding edge of innovation, right? So when it comes to Nym, I'm actually still quite new, even compared to a lot of the community members here when it comes to privacy. But what I am very, very passionate and excited about is the fact that Nym really has a big role to play in how the future of the Web3 industry can look like. And I'm not saying this just kind of like idealistically, because from my experience, I've seen a lot of like experience. I've experienced a lot when it came to NFTs, and where we actually did change a lot of the culture that emerged, a few years later when it came to NFTs, right? And maybe to a lesser degree, at the DeFi company I was with, we also saw that the directions that we were trying to take the industry, were ones that if we weren't there trying to make these pushes, then the industry wouldn't have like an option for a second like another path, right? So for example, in DeFi, right? There's a lot of like uncertainty right now when it comes to KYC and then like AML and how DeFi platforms out of the hands of the government, so they don't like it, right? So on one hand, the governments could ban DeFi platforms outright. And while that wouldn't stop our ability to interact with these platforms at the end of the day, we all saw what happened to the creators of Tornado Cash, right? So at the end of the day, there's things that we must be able to do to, number one, protect ourselves, but also stay true to what we kind of believe in, right? Which is really trying to take the industry in a direction that we believe in, right? And not just focus on token prices, for example, or trying to gain the biggest market share as soon as possible. And so in my previous project, one of the things that I felt that we were doing very well is we really wanted to ensure that we kind of wanted to be able to exist within a good regulatory framework, right? So the infrastructure for the project was still traded through DeFi smart contracts, right? As opposed to CeFi platform, right? Where everything happens like in a black box. And and the platform may or may not trade against you, right? Well, we all know that they pretty much do. So at least with smart contracts, with completely like unregulated DeFi platforms, there are still issues with like front running, for example, by bots. But the kind of like the middle ground that my project was considering was, having a whitelist, right, of addresses that would be fully KYC'd to be able to basically use the platform, right? So it was like a permission DeFi platform in a sense. It's not obviously everyone's favorite idea where anything to do with KYC is a pain, and it's not even honestly like I personally hate giving out my information. It's the fact that like with the laws and regulations of like whatever jurisdiction that I happen to be like under the control of, they can take my ability away to be able to use any platform that requires KYC, right? So I've been trying to, it's also part of my own like philosophy is to be as flexible as possible when it comes to what I can do, where I can be. So basically this grand idea of like freedom, right? Self-sovereignty in a sense. So I know a lot of people can and are very, very proud of where they're from, very nationalistic. I put my sovereignty in myself, right? So me as a sovereign individual, I would like to have as many passports as I can, as many identities as I can, completely legally, obviously, because that's still allowed, right? Because as we all know, there's the saying that I really like, right? If you're a slave to both, if you're a slave to two or more masters, then you're not really a slave. So then you can kind of choose like who you want to listen to and who you don't want to listen to at the end of the day, right? So there's more I could go on about this. Not all about this is not all of this is about privacy, but generally my worldview about like freedom in general to do what we want in the world and online. But I want to give myself a little break and hand it over back to Sudo.
All right. So let's talk about privacy then, because my understanding is that you were in DeFi for the most part. Okay, before that, a quick question before that. Did you ever have a disillusionment moment with the DeFi space? Because I personally did. I'm curious like how you feel about the space these days.
Not too much DeFi per se, but especially in the culture of Hong Kong, right? Where you go to all of these big crypto conferences, and then everybody's talking about like, oh, institutionalize. We got to institutionalize. Do all these things to like bring crypto under control. And then I look at these big people who these big TradFi fund manager or ex TradFi fund managers that are now in crypto, and I'm saying like, well, why are you like really in this space in the first place? They'll like complain about like the industry as a whole. They'll point out all the problems here and there, and then they'll use that as a reason to say this is why crypto needs us to kind of like be the big boys and be the like the serious guys in suits to take away this image of unprofessionalism from the industry. But at the end of the day, like I always kind of think to myself, well, you're only saying that because it benefits you, right? Like, do you really think that at the end of the day that you're benefiting the greater population more? Because it really just seems to me at the end of the day it benefits you. So that's my disillusionment. Not too much with DeFi, but more of like TradFi trying to get into crypto.
So that's kind of what I meant. And also TradFi practices, we could call them best practices, but actually they are not really great. So that would be a bit of an exaggeration. So those are, it looks like they are being just one-to-one implemented in DeFi in like a less regulated environment, which is kind of terrible. So that was my, obviously this is not all projects, just like within crypto itself, there's terrible projects, and rug pulls and all of that stuff, and just projects with no substance at all. But there's a significant number of very serious innovators who are like really pushing the envelope when it comes to bringing the most out of blockchain and changing the world. But I guess, at least in my personal opinion, within DeFi, the ratio is even worse. Like there's even more people trying to get rich and trying to use the current lack of proper regulations so that they get rich. But anyways, moving on to privacy. Let's talk about that a little bit because I'm super curious. Actually, I never asked you this, so it's the first time I'm going to hear this answer as well. How did you end up at Nym?
So yeah, it was quite an interesting journey for me. I left my previous organization in, I would say, February of this year, and there were a few projects that I've been like helping out there and there, here and there, doing advisory work, just helping out part time. And most of the projects that I've worked with during that time, early this year, were a little bit smaller than Nym, right? And while I was working with them, I wasn't really too interested in really joining full time, because one of the things that I really enjoyed from my experience, from working with Animoca, Master Ventures, and my previous organization, Mantra, I was very, very happy working with the founders there, right? Obviously, I saw Yat, build Animoca from like a company that was listed more or less as a penny stock on on the Australian exchange to multi-billion-dollar company. The other founders of Master Ventures, Kyle Chassis, was a big Bitcoin believer that bought Bitcoin pre $100, and is truly aligned with the principles of decentralization and this technology, as well as the founders of Mantra, that were very, very focused on building the best DeFi experience possible, right? So during earlier months this year, the founders that I work with were still very new, right? Very fresh founders that I loved working with and I loved helping. But when it came to Nym, and I was approached by Jack to learn about this opportunity. Harry and the executive team at Nym, gave me that feeling once again, right? Of founders that are really, really aligned with the mission of the organization, right? Which is to bring privacy all around the world. So after learning more and more about Nym's history, a little bit more about the technology, that's when I once again felt this sense of excitement to really join and devote a lot of time to this project. And a long story short, now I'm here today.
And we're glad you are. So then, a quick question, since our position is basically the same in name, right? I'm head of community, or head of community for Asia. It's an interesting market, right? So Asia is a very, very different place from the West in general. The market operates in a very different way. What are your general? It's probably too early to ask, like for deep strategy or something like that. But what are your general plans for Asia?
So yeah, it's a very good question. I have been spending most of my time in the Asian markets. However, like you said, there's quite a few markets within Asia Pacific, and they all operate very, very differently from each other, right? Obviously, we have one of the biggest markets in China. We have a very interesting regulatory environment in Hong Kong, in Singapore as well. And then there's also South Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia, the bigger communities that are involved in Web3. Biggest one probably being Vietnam, followed by Indonesia, and then also Thailand, right? Within each ecosystem, I would say China can be kind of considered one that played a very big role, especially in the early days in 2017, 2018, right? And while there isn't much public participation in crypto from China itself, a lot of the top projects, top funds in the space are connected to China in some way, right? Whether by through the founders, through so basically, right, there's this culture of almost shadow Chinese teams that are supporting a lot of the big projects out there, and even a lot of the projects that the general public might not consider Chinese do actually have a lot of ties to Chinese teams or funding that comes from China. At the end of the day, in China, I think right now the technology of Nym Connect is not able to be fully utilized within the region. And it's a different mentality when it comes to privacy, because especially in China, it's quite no many people don't really remember the days of when privacy was a more commonplace, right? privacy there. If you look at a lot of the technology that is being implemented within China, man, you scan with your retina to pay for like McDonald's, you scan with your palm, right? To get into the metro stations. Everything is like almost like there's not much ways you can kind of avoid surveillance or like, keep information private, right? If you on the streets as well, you see like cameras on every corner, right? However, at the end of the day, like even today, I've had journalists in China reach out to me to ask me more about some of the partnerships that we are doing within our ecosystem. And there are a very large, I would say, actually a very large number of privacy, I wouldn't say advocates, but very enthusiasts at the end of the day, right? So when it comes to the mentality of people in China, they usually see privacy and the technology surrounding privacy from an enthusiast's lens, right? From trying to understand the technology very, very well, trying to understand like how to avoid all the vulnerabilities when it comes to leaking data, stuff like that. But it's less of a, I would say, participatory angle that kind of exists in the West, right? Whereas there's a lot more advocacy of privacy rather than this enthusiasm, right? But that's not to say that people aren't interested at all. Just the fact that the mentality when approaching the subject is quite different from the West, right? There's less I can speak to about privacy in general when it comes to Japan and Korea. However, as a lot of us have kind of seen within the Korean market, especially, there's a very high level of enthusiasm for crypto. There's a lot of famous and also infamous projects that have come out of South Korea, including the most infamous one probably, which is Luna Terra. Within Korea, there is a thriving ecosystem that I'm going to spend more time exploring because I previously haven't had too much opportunities to really do that. But even back in 2017, there was this very interesting phenomenon that was happening where people from South Korea would come to Hong Kong with like big suitcases of cash, buy crypto in Hong Kong, fly directly back to Korea, sell it at a markup, and then take a plane straight back to Hong Kong with another big suitcase of cash to buy more crypto. And this was because of a thing called the Kimchi premium at the time, where the exchanges in South Korea were selling crypto at a premium when compared to international markets. So I would say a lot of people got rich during that time, including SBF. To my knowledge, that was the period of time where he was actually able to get his first good amount of funds to really start FTX. And even today, if you kind of go into South Korea, there are a lot of popular apps that are integrated with crypto payment systems, right? So there is that culture of integrating Web3 into the digital infrastructure within the pretty much payment infrastructure as well within the region, right? And when it comes to Japan, I would say there is more skepticism when it comes to crypto as compared to the Korean market. And the Japanese market is one that is very heavily regulated and very, very conservative. So when it comes to Web3 and Web3 technology in general, the adoption rate is not as quick. And we kind of think of Japan as a very high-tech place. However, there are still certain processes, and this goes for a lot of like other industries as well, right? There's still a lot of very, very, I would say, antiquated processes that just kind of refuse to modernize and change because in their minds, why fix something that isn't broken, right? So yeah, there's especially this conservative mentality when it comes to the Japanese market, and when it comes to regulation, there's interesting caveats. For example, Japan has a limited amount of exchange licenses that they have, And in the Japanese jurisdiction, they actually don't give out any more exchange licenses than the ones that are already existing. So that makes it very, very hard for any players to even try to enter the market and get and obtain one of these exchange licenses, right? So yeah, once again, there's a lot of caveats when it comes to the Japanese market as well. And when talking about Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, one of the things, the most recent market that I spent a good amount of time in was Indonesia, where one of the biggest platforms there was Tokopedia. If any Indonesians in the yes, exactly, Tokopedia. Thank you, Pomflake. One of the biggest platforms in Indonesia is currently very well integrated with one of the bigger exchanges, local exchanges in the region. It's pretty much like, for those of you guys who don't know, Tokopedia is pretty much like Amazon, like in Indonesia, right? So imagine you pretty much, having the Amazon of Indonesia integrated with one of the biggest crypto exchanges there. So just from that, you can see that the Indonesian government is quite, I would say, even bullish on cryptocurrency. But yes, and there is a good amount of projects that are actually developing, have their development teams and teams in general in Bali right now, which is where I spent 6 months last year, kind of getting to know the ecosystem there. And yes, in Indodax. Funny enough, I I tried to KYC on Indodax the second time, and then I got rejected. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Bonflake. I want to make it to ETH Bali, and I want to make it to Coinfest. I was actually in Indonesia during the time of Coinfest last year. However, I wasn't able to get tickets because I bought it too late. Yeah. So I joined the after party though. One of the ones hosted by 1inch. I do see a lot of enthusiasm from the Indonesian government when it comes to Web3 and crypto. However, once again, right, some enthusiasm and translating to actual changes in policy, that stuff takes time, right? Nothing happens overnight, so it's still a gradual transformation from my perspective. Obviously, we have a lot of community members actually within the local markets that might know more than me. So please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, or add on to any comments that I may have shared already. And yeah, thanks, man, Pomflake. Feel free to send me a DM. Moving on quickly, I know we don't have too much time right now to left to Vietnam, Indonesia. Vietnam for sure is one of the there's one especially very big project based out of Vietnam called Coin 98 that was there. And I'll also miss the Philippines. So I'll just go through the last few regions very, very quickly. Vietnam has a large number of strong developers and projects that are based out of the country. As for the general regulatory framework and ecosystem, I am not as familiar. With Thailand, one of the most recent news is the fact that Binance just got their exchange license in Thailand. Well, we've seen them kind of get rejected by so many other jurisdictions recently that this is quite refreshing to kind of see. Obviously, when it comes to the Philippines, one of the biggest markets for Axie at the time was in the Philippines, especially during the pandemic, where a lot of people turned to play to earn games as an alternative source of income, right? So yeah, that's pretty much like a little tidbit about each region. I would say has a very strong presence in Web3, and as you guys have also kind of seen, there's so much stuff to talk about, and the region is so big that I could probably go on forever talking about this subject in particular. So I have my work cut out for me, but I'm very happy to see we have a lot of community members within the region, and I'm very happy to talk with and speak with anybody regarding Nym or anything else in Web3 or just life in general. So please always feel free to reach out to me whenever you like.
Wow. I felt a bit bad about asking this question like a week or maybe 1.5 week after you joined. And then, then you were able to like give a really detailed answer. That's amazing, man. Can't wait to see that happen. Well, let me throw a curveball at this community call a little bit because we didn't really let poor Diane speak, which is not cool at all. So, Diane, I have a question for you as well.
Okay.
So, you're one of the people in the team who put a lot of effort into the whole Bybit thing. And normally we don't really make a lot of fuss about programs like this, and also we don't really have programs like this. So, can you maybe talk a little bit about why this is important?
Yes, sure thing. And also, I forgot, I just realized I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry, everyone. I'm actually the social media manager for Nym. I do Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. So all the posts on Twitter are by me, just so you know. And yeah, I took part in this Bybit campaign as well. So the reason we're making a lot of noise for this campaign, which is not very like common for us, we don't usually do this, and we've started doing a lot of these kind of campaigns recently. But the Bybit one is most important because we really need our tokens to be out there and to be in people's hands to ensure that the project is like, first of all, economically viable to our community of node operators, right? And we want to ensure like maximum power to the tokenomics as well, and like have a lot of people be able to stake. Not only that, but we also want the token to be decentralized and not like vulnerable to whales. So the more people can have this token, the better it is for the tokenomics. And we also do this to ensure that we have a broad range of stakeholders who have an interest in the success of the project. So this is for them as well. This is like for the whole team, for the whole community. Most importantly, it is to prepare for the usability and the mainstream adoption of Nym as a product, right? So the Nym token is a vital part of the ecosystem. And as you know, we're planning to launch a viable product very soon. And it's going to be very important that more people have access to the Nym token, putting that, being able to get listed on Bybit, which is one of the top 10 exchange, especially in terms of market cap, is something that will be very beneficial to the Nym token. So sorry if we keep pushing this campaign. If you've already seen it, that's great. If you already took part, but we really want to emphasize like this is super important for us, basically. So yeah, I hope that you will be like helping us with that. The whole team is helping as well, and we're really pushing for this to happen, for the vote to go through. Yes.
Yeah, super important indeed. And don't normally bring these topics to the community call at all, but I just wanted to acknowledge all the hard work that you've been putting into a really good job. And let's fingers crossed that we get listed on Bybit. It would be amazing.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Me and Jacky as well have been putting a lot of work into this.
Jacky, anything to add? Has it been stressful your first week at Nym or first 1.5 week?
Nothing that I wouldn't change. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be here making an impact at the end of the day. So stress, but good stress.
Yeah, story of my life for the past year since I joined Nym. All right. Well, I guess on that note, I think we're bumping up against our time. So, do you guys have any closing remarks, maybe, or maybe any community questions? A few minutes to go.
Yeah, please do leave us your questions if you have any. And welcome again, Jacky, to the team. I think it's been like over 2 weeks now since you joined. Yeah, are you still in London, by the way?
Yep.
Time just flies in good company.
I visited the London office twice last week.
Nice.
And yeah, I quite like where the office is located because there's a lot of like entertainment companies that are kind of our neighbors, and it was quite interesting.
Interesting. I can't wait to visit.
Have you been to the French office?
No, because I live quite far away from Paris.
Right. Yeah, like we also visited the French office last week as well. Yeah, it was also very quite interesting place.
Very cool.
But yeah.
All right, folks. Well, that was our time, though. So, I'll say goodbye to everybody. Big thanks for joining, both to my beautiful guests and also to the participants or the audience of this call. As always, it was recorded, so it will be uploaded at some point to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions or suggestions, regarding the format of this community call or anything along the lines, then you can reach out to me in DM at any point. Beck is always welcome. And yeah, have a lovely day, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Hey everyone, bye bye.
Bye.
Have a lovely day, everybody. Catch you later. Bye.